Okay, so this is Integrity Capital commercial loan scenarios. This is giving loan officers, loan associates, an idea of all these different scenarios that we could potentially walk through and how we gather information, what they look like. These are kind of live scenarios, and then how we give feedback at the end. What do we do with them? Where do they go? How do we give feedback based on the information that we gathered? So the first one is an owner-occupied transaction. Call it a purchase with bad credit. Okay. So the scenario is like there's an automotive-related company. So they're automotive, doing lube jobs and fixing cars. So this company's been in business for 5 years. And they're looking to buy their existing building they've been renting. So they've been renting their building for a while, and they are now looking to acquire it. So it's almost like a rent-to-own situation that they're in. So the first section we go through again is asset information. So we want to kind of understand what is it that they're buying. And so here's some questions that we might ask. So tell me about the building and if there's been any historical environmental issues. Why I would ask that question is because in that type of environment, they have oil and lube and all these things that could be causing environmental issues. That, it's like a gas station. If someone's buying a gas station, they would definitely want to understand, like, is there any historical environmental issues? Almost in every situation. What's the square footage would be a great question you would ask. When was the building built? What's the condition of the building? So we're just trying to gather some facts about in this particular situation, it was a 5,000 square foot warehouse building in reasonable shape, built in 1985. So again, so now you're starting to get this. Okay, it's 5,000 square feet. It's in good shape. There's no environmental issues, so we're good there. That's a check. Okay. Now we go down to this section we've talked about before, which is urgency. So again, here's some questions you can ask to drive this situation out in this live scenario. What is driving you to do this at this time? If you're a rent-own, why don't you just stay renting? Why can't you wait? What happens if you don't? These are all ways you can get a gauge for their urgency. In this particular situation, the lease was coming up soon, and they wanted to capitalize on the lease or get kicked out. So the lease was coming to an end. They had an option contract to buy at this certain period of time for the certain price. So they didn't want to lose out on that. So there was definitely some clear urgency in this automotive owner-occupied acquisition. So we get past urgency, we go check, that's a win. Loyalty, again, what other lenders are you talking to right now? And what's been their feedback? So yeah, I've talked to my local bank. Well, what did they say? What was their feedback? They were talking to their existing lender. Their lender was dragging their fee, or they just gave them some terms they didn't like. And so you're just gathering that information to say, okay, is this somebody that's shopping around a lot, or they're going to be loyal to the situation? So definitely want to make sure that we get that information. So once you've gotten past that, and in her particular situation, she had talked to her lender. They weren't really that interested. And we'll start to get into some more of why. But then we're going to talk about, again, cash flow, credit, collateral, and credibility. Right? Those are the 4 C's that we talk about in this industry. So here's some questions. What was your net income of the company on your tax returns last year? It's a very specific question. Now, a lot of times they'll give you their gross, but that's not what you're looking for. You're saying, what actually hit the bottom line? I asked that question today, and the very first time I asked it happens all the time. They say, I made $1 million. I said, no, I'm not talking about top line. I said, what hit the bottom line? After all your expenses, what is it that's hitting the bottom line? So you need to know that number because that's going to tell you the debt service coverage ratio. Then the other question is, what did you make on your personal tax returns? So what was it on your personal tax returns that you made last year as well? So we wanted that information. That helps us to know if they have made something or not. In this particular situation, they made money for the year this year, call it 2020 if that was the case, but they've not filed tax returns, and the years prior to this year were very weak. Didn't really cash flow that well. They were they were just barely scraping by because they just tried to overload expenses to get their tax liability down. It's pretty normal. It doesn't help, but it's normal. The second tranche is, what other debts do you have in your business or personal? How much cash do you have? So now we want to know, they might make a bunch of money, but they're paying a bunch out of debt. So what debts do you have? Monthly payments of debts that you have in your business and personal. Now you're going to get some of this in documentation, but you also want to ask over the phone. And then how much cash do you have on hand? If I have $10,000, well, if they're buying a building that's going to cost them 150 grand, that's going to be hard. It's like, where's the cash coming from? Okay. Well, I'm still trying to work that out. Well, again, so we want to know, like in this particular situation, she had a lot of little debts all over that we were starting to kind of see that she had, a fair amount of debt. So then the third tranche of questions, once you get past those, is, have you ever had any bankruptcies, foreclosures, short sales, lawsuits in the last 5 to 7 years? So we're trying to understand what their track record with making good credit decisions was. Now, people have situations come up all the time, so we need to know the story. But we want to understand these things really specific. Now, for her, she had a lot. She had a lot of late pays, a lot of short pays. It was hurting her credit, but that became a real big issue in the transaction. In fact, later on, unfortunately, we've learned from this now, but we probably wouldn't have taken it on. But this just became a pattern where she just kept not revealing information to us and running into issues down the road. So we want to know that. It's a big deal. It starts to tell you something about them, right? A little bit of character and such. But and then how long have they been in business? So that goes back to the credibility factor of that fourth C. In her situation, but she'd been doing it for 20 years. So that's good. She's got a lot of experience. She's made it through the first 5 years, which is a big success. So when somebody's been doing it that long, then you kind of go, okay, they're not going anywhere, unless there was a major disaster. So once you kind of get past that and you go, okay, I feel comfortable, I'm okay, then we go to expectations. What is the client expecting? So what specifically question are you looking to accomplish with your loan? What interest rate are you trying to get? They might not know, but it's, what do you think it is, right? But are they looking for a certain loan to value, a high loan to value, or do they want a prepayment penalty? Are they okay with one or not? When do you need to close? What is the time frame? Okay, I need to close in 10 days. Well, that makes a big difference. In this particular case, she was looking for a high loan to value. She didn't have a lot of cash, and obviously the ability to execute. She had to close. So here we are. We've got this information now. We've understood the asset a little bit. It's in the industry. Okay, it's a little special purpose because there's bays that go under the ground, so we know that that's not like an easily convertible project. We know that she's generally committed and urgent, so loyalty and urgency is there. We've gone through the 4 C's and we've kind of said, okay, there's some credit issues. Cash is okay. She should be able, their cash flow was okay for the interim, but it wasn't great. So this is a mediocre type of deal, and one that is more focused on getting over the finish line than thriving. Okay, and you'll do those. You have to make some judgment calls. But so really, the feedback here is to say, okay, given all these factors, A, it's owner occupied. You really only have 3 options: 7A, 504, or conventional. Well, pretty much as soon as she told us that she needs a high loan to value, we pretty much got rid of conventional, because that's 75 to 80%. So you can pretty much take that out of the equation. So now you've got these 2 scenarios, 7A, 504. Well, the reason why we went 7A was because they do some working capital, they can work more on projections, they were okay to deal with some of the credit issues. And so it's hey, we're going to do the 7A, recommending a 7A loan to them, 25-year amortization. It's probably going to be a floating rate, unfortunately, just because, again, you've got some cash flow issues, got some credit issues, some late pays. So unfortunately, this is not a sort of class A type of deal. It's going to fall into more of a B minus C class. So it's going to be, again, probably not fixed, probably floating, probably going to be a 531 prepayment penalty, which they are on all in 7A. Rate was prime plus 2 3/4, which is the max they can price. And it's really an execution-oriented loan. It's something to get her into the building, hopefully get her stabilized for a while, and then refinance out of it. So that's kind of that's the discussion that you're going to have with a client on this kind of scenario. We have, again, owner-occupied, mediocre stuff. There's some bumps on the screen for credit. There's some bumps maybe on cash flow historically. Well, you're going to fall into that SBA bucket, and you're going to probably fall into a 7A, maybe 504. But those are the 2 that you're going to offer to this client in order to have success with them. So again, this is just a scenario for you for an owner-occupied, probably mediocre with some bad credit scenario.